Welcome, my friends, to From the Bridge, the podcast home of all things about corporate sponsorships and event marketing. I'm Rick Jones of FishBait Solutions. We have a great show today with Bob Vecchione, the Chief Executive Officer of NACDA, the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics. It's been quite a year in college sports, and Bob will share his thoughts on where he thinks college sports is headed and the role that NACDA will play. We'll continue our series on the 7 C's of new business pitches, take another trip up on the Soapbox, and find another great place to eat on the road with Rick. So let's get started. Let's turn our attention to the 3rd C in our series of the 7 C's of effective pitching of new business. Remember, the first C was competency. Your expertise and experience as an agency or individual consultant. The second C was context. Your understanding of answering the so what question by applying your identification of your competencies directly to understanding fully the specific needs of the client. Now comes the secret sauce. The 3rd C, which may be the most important, namely your ability to challenge their thinking. Clients don't hire you or think about hiring you to tell them what they already know or what they already think. They hire you to challenge them and their and others' conventional thinking. Here's a couple of examples. One we did right, and one, unfortunately, we did wrong. Let's start with the right one. I've told you on this show about our program with Mastercard in the World Cup back in 1994. Conventional wisdom in that era was the only way to leverage soccer in America was through youth soccer. And so every other agency pitched Mastercard by telling them all kinds of great ideas they had for Mastercard to embrace youth soccer in America. Now, we felt like that probably worked for Coca-Cola or maybe McDonald's or Snickers. But how many little boys and girls were going to walk off the soccer pitch and say, hey, Mom, let's go use the Mastercard today? It just didn't make any sense. And so we challenged the way they thought about the World Cup in soccer. We said, forget soccer, forget the sport. This is an enormous event in America for the first time, an event that's going to have huge economic impact. We coined the phrase welcoming the world to America, which really meant welcoming the world's money to America. And we wanted a disproportionate amount of that money paid for with a Mastercard card. And so everything that we did came out of that challenge position. Let's don't talk about soccer as a sport. Let's talk about the World Cup as an event. That was a big success. In fact, it was later written up by the Harvard Business School as one of the first sponsorship case studies ever. Okay, let me tell you about one we did wrong. Not so long ago, Invesco QQQ became a sponsor of the NCAA as a corporate partner, and we were invited to submit our credentials in an RFP. I think we did a pretty good job of telling them what our expertise and experience was, but we screwed up by not challenging them. See, here's what they wanted. They said they wanted to use the NCAA assets to create financial literacy programs for student athletes. We should have challenged them on that. You see, there had been 2 previous other sponsors of the NCAA directly in their category. First, the Hartford, and then Northwestern Mutual Insurance. And both had tried the same strategy, and both had dismally failed. Why? Because the NCAA doesn't have the assets to help you reach student athletes on campuses. They don't have those rights. The NCAA has the rights to put on championships, namely men's and women's basketball and a bunch of other sports championships, but they have literally no way of penetrating individual schools. What Invesco wanted been there, done that, and not done it very well because architecturally what they had bought would not enable them to do that. And I should have had the guts to tell them the truth, but I didn't because we thought, oh, let's just follow the leader. Let's just go and give them what they want. And we didn't even have a chance to pitch. I should have told them their baby was ugly because their baby was ugly. We learned our lesson big time on that one and vowed never again. I also believe that in order to serve clients, you have to continuously challenge their thinking and bring fresh ideas to them all the time. Challenging them is essential before you win the business and after you've won it. My very special guest today is my old friend and colleague, Bob Vecchione, who oversees NACDA. NACDA is the trade association of everything connected to college athletics except for the coaches and the athletic trainers. It's the business side of college athletics, from administrators to marketers to sports information directors to compliance, you name it. It falls into some organization under NACDA. Bob is one of the very best guys in our business. Those that listen to us regularly know I like to eat, and I keep a list of my favorite dishes that I've ever eaten anywhere. And the best dish I've ever eaten is a place called Johnny's in Cleveland, Ohio. And my good friend Bob Vecchione took me there several years ago. They have stuffed banana peppers, veal stuffed banana peppers with marinara. It is literally the best dish I've ever had, and it's all because of my friend, Bob Vecchione. Let's welcome Bob to the bridge. Hey, Bob, welcome to the bridge.
Hey, good morning, Rick.
Listen, I'm excited about you being here. I always ask all my guests to kind of go way, way, way back. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school?
Grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I went to Addison Trail High School and then matriculated to Missouri Western State College in St. Joe, Missouri.
St. Joe's. My buddy Mike Mcclendon is doing a project in St. Joe's right now that's really, really interesting. They've taken some federal money, and they're trying to decide how they change the culture of their town. And it's a really interesting campaign. Do they want to be St. Joe's, and they show crime and poverty and a lot of negative images, or do they want to be St. Joseph's, and they show the positive of the community and cut lawns and the school and all that stuff? So it's really, really fascinating from that standpoint. When you got out of school, what was your first job?
Well, my uncle ran a masonry company, and I went to go work for him as a hod carrier, and I was one of the few people in the company who spoke English. They were all Italians off the boat from Italy.
Wow, that had to be quite an experience. And
yeah,
so were you the translator mostly back to the boss?
Well, I learned a lot of words that we can't use on this podcast. That's for
sure. That's too good. That's very good. You know, I think that's a great reminder of how many immigrants made our country.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, it really is. I think we've lost the understanding of people came here from other cultures and other places, many of them not even speaking the language, and figured out a way to chase the American dream. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, both my grandfathers came from Italy. And my great-grandparents, I remember them, neither of them spoke English. They spoke Italian.
That's amazing.
And my grandfathers had menial jobs working for the park district or the gas company, and they just worked their way up, you know?
Yeah, it was the old-fashioned way, wasn't it? Just one kind of step at a time, or one brick at a time, or one whatever at a time. And yeah, they did, and there wasn't a lot of complaining, and there wasn't a lot of asking for for help other than, what we would do to anybody else. Different era in a lot of ways.
No doubt. And I kind of miss it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, in sport, I've always said that as a sports sociologist, I always look back at the 1920s, which was a great melting pot era where we had so many folks come from other countries, and this was the next generation of those immigrants, and they all played ball, and at that point it didn't matter, what your language was or your religion or where you came from or where your parents came from. It was, could you play? When you walk on the baseball field, could you play? When you walked on the football field, could you play? And really, really interesting time to watch the great influence of immigrants on American sport during that. Well, you and I first met when you were at National Car Rental. How'd you tell me about the journey to get there?
Well, a friend of mine, I wanted to get out of the hod carrying business and get away from my uncle. So one of the toughest conversations I had was with my grandfather, I said, Grandpa, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to work with my mind versus my body. And he looked at me, he said, you're going to regret it. You got to learn a trade. But I just met, I had a real good friend of mine who worked for National, and he got me the interview. And, I just had a great interview with the gentleman, and then got called in for the second one, and, got lucky and had Grandma Vecchione say a couple rosaries and a novena, and I got the job, and it just kind of blossomed and mushroomed from there.
Well, I still rent from National all the time because of you. Because you got National in as an NCA corporate partner.
Yep.
And I was working with Jim Host at the time, and I still think I have my original card that goes way, way, way back, and have been very loyal. So you were very persuasive for all of us during that era of, hey, if you're going to be involved in college sports, you need to rent from National. And like I said, I still do.
Yeah, it was just, it was, you don't get a lot of, you don't get a lot of times in your life when you're able to be the first one on the block. And, we just got lucky, and the timing was right. And we were just the first ones who identified the intercollegiate market as a target audience. And, it was all the stars lined up, and obviously, thanks to Jim and the passion that I had for college athletics, saw an opportunity and really took advantage of it. And I'm very blessed that it really springboarded my career.
I talk about bridges a lot. We laughingly say this show's From the Bridge, which is the bridge of the ship. But the truth is it's about bridges in careers and lives and connectivity and all that. And, what you did at National then ultimately led you to your life's pursuit with NACDA. And so you leave National having built great relationships with so many people in intercollegiate athletics, and you go to work for a guy that I had tremendous respect for, the late Mike Cleary at NACDA. Talk a little bit about that, and talk a little bit about Mike.
Yeah, Mike was a phenomenal leader, a great friend. We became friends when I was looking to get in the college marketplace, and I was told by a number of people, there's two people you have to meet. One is Tim Simmons from the Adolph Coors Brewing Company, and the other is Mike Cleary. And so I met with Mike in 1984 in the Red Lion Inn at SeaTac Airport over breakfast, and we just hit it off, and I became a sponsor of NACDA. First Final Four was 1985 in Lexington, Kentucky, and we sponsored a cocktail reception for the ADs, and again we just hit it off, and really took the NCAA sponsorship that we had with Jim Host and coupled that with the NACDA relationship, and within 3 years the revenue went from $0 to $15 million. It was just a mind-boggling experience. But what really got me interested and why I really loved it, and to this day, is the relationships that I had with people. I mean, being a student athlete and then being able to, work with athletics directors and help student athletes, and being in this environment is just it's just been a godsend. And Mike was always there. He was the original Irish Godfather. Kevin White has that title now, but Mike just said, when I was at the University of Minnesota, he said, you need to come work for me. And I said, my wife loves Minnesota. We love it here. He said, yeah, but, you're not making any money, and you can make a bigger impact on a national scale than you can on a local scale. And he just, God bless him, took me under his wing and said, you need to come work with me, and you need to build a business. I can't do it like I know you can. And he just had the utmost faith in me. And it's been a remarkable journey.
Well, it's interesting about forks in the road. I mean, at National, you get to meet a lot of people in intercollegiate athletics. Then you go internally and begin to understand what a campus is like and what athletic directors and other business leaders in intercollegiate athletics needs. And then Mike saw in you the ability to help him do things that he didn't have a skill set for. And I think that's really, really important. I've always told everybody about running an agency, and Heck, Bob, I've been running them for about 35 years now. The best training I ever had was being a coach. And because the first thing you realize as a coach is you can't play. You better get some players. And it's the same way in the agency business. And Mike, in a lot of ways, was kind of a coach in that he looked at filling out his staff with skill sets that were complementary yet were different than his. And I think that was a really great part of his legacy, was his ability to see talent.
No doubt. It's for him. It started at an early age. It was funny because him and his wife Sue, who recently passed, they had 9 kids. They both were only children. But when he first got in the sports business, he was a scout for Eddie Donovan at the New York Knicks. So one year, Eddie said, "Mike, I need you to find me a white power forward." And Mike says, "What?" He says, "Eddie said, I need a white power forward. We have to draft a white power forward." Now, this is probably in 67, or it was before it was leading up to the Knicks championship season. So it might have been later. But anyway, he comes back. He identifies Phil Jackson.
Wow.
And obviously the rest is history. The Knicks draft Phil Jackson, then he goes on and becomes, a role player with the Knicks, but then obviously works into being one of the most decorated coaches in the NBA. And Mike always had a unique ability to, again, identify talent. He was gruff on the outside, but he told me, he says, "Look, I can't do this anymore. I don't have the ability." For him to admit that he needed help, older, stubborn Irishman, to admit that in that day and age was really a big thing. And I'll never, I'll always commend him for his leadership and his love of me and my family, and it can never be replaced. And I try to pass that on to our staff as when the baton passes, it's something that you need to do, you want to do, and we've tried to do that here at NACDA.
Well, I know one of the things that you're proud of is your intern program. I mean, if we look at people that started in our industry as NACDA interns, it's significant. Talk about that program.
Yeah, it's a program that Mike started, and golly, we have over 225 kids in the food chain now, going way back. One of the first interns that we had when I was here was Lee Reed. And Lee Reed came to us from New Mexico. He's a student athlete at Cleveland State, New Mexico. Well, as you know, Lee matriculated up the food chain and was athletics director at Eastern Michigan, Cleveland State, Georgetown. Then 4 years ago, he became a NACDA president.
Yeah, that's crazy. Isn't that amazing? What a journey from intern to NACDA president.
phenomenal, and you know, and that whole saga has continued because right now we have 15 full-time staff people at NACDA, and 8 of them are former interns. So it's really important to me to maintain that NACDA culture because we're just different. You know, we just think different. We're you know, it might be, you know, it might be 2021, you know, when you go outside in the world, but when you come in our offices, it's still 1965. And, you know, the work ethic is just incredible, and their attention to detail and their love of the business and camaraderie with one another. I mean, you just can't replace that. It's really special.
Well, the collegiate marketplace literally is a family, and it's all about connectivity, and it's all about education and leadership and training. And that's what you guys do best. You know, you and I were talking the other day about the turnover this year in the number of ADs that have retired and the number of new, younger ADs that have taken over. And you told me something I thought was really compelling. You said, hey, Rick, we got a lot of new ones, but they all came through NACDA. They're all our guys or gals. They're all our people. Talk about that as we have this transformational year and the role that NACDA's played in so many ways with this new group of ADs.
Well, it is a transformational year, and we did have a tremendous number of our leaders retire, but luckily, you know, through the years, the bar was raised economically for them to allow them to do that. And I think COVID really played a role in you know, people's lives. And hey, what's really important to me? And if you have enough to spend more time with your family, why not do it? But if you look at the, and I don't have the exact numbers, but over 98% of the athletics directors' positions that have been filled in the last 3 years, 98% have come from within. So that means, you know, deputy, senior associates rising to the top to eventually fulfilling their dream to sit in the chair. But that also allows the next generation, the associates, the assistants, to move up the food chain and sit in that number 2 and number 3 position. So, you know, there was a time when at your Power 5 schools, when individuals from corporate America did come in to, you know, Morgan Burke, at Morgan Burke at Purdue, you know, Jack Swarbrick at Notre Dame. He's one who came from a law firm. Pat Richter at Wisconsin. There were a number of guys who came from the outside, but the trend now is to hire from within the industry, and that plays right into NACDA's hand because our role of education and networking. You know, a lot of these people came up through the food chain. They came up through one of our 17 associations that we manage, so they understand the role we play and the need for people to network with one another and the need to build that camaraderie. And so NACDA really is built into the fabric of intercollegiate athletics. And again, it all goes back to Mike Cleary. That was his vision. That was his vision when he started the business. And then when I was hired, it was the vision of our leaders, the Bill Burns, the Jack Langles, the Jim Jones, the Mike Ludes, the Homer Rices. Those are the ones that said, hey, we want you to build a business, and here's how we want you to do it. And it's really paid phenomenal dividends today.
Well, you mentioned COVID, and that was a wicked curveball that literally none of us saw coming, but it did. And you guys had to pivot, you know, like everybody else. I mean, we went from having what I consider to be the best convention in the business, you know, but just because of not only the sessions and the speakers and the educational tracks that you have, just the camaraderie of having everybody in the industry under one roof, you know, I think is essential to intercollegiate athletics. But you had to change, and your staff did an amazing job. Talk about how you pivoted to being literally going from a face-to-face convention to creating all sorts of online assets and ultimately doing a virtual convention, not once, but twice.
Yeah, we, you know, it was difficult, but we circled the wagons, and I just said, hey, listen, if with this COVID now, if if we have to think differently. Every element of our business we have to look at and say, how can we do it better and how can we do it differently? So our staff, again, God love them, they were working from home. We did not have to lay off anyone. We had the great fortune of, they'd be lucky than good. We happened to do an IT audit 2 years ago, so we all had upgraded equipment, and we were able to really be flexible. And we went to a situation where we had over 300 hours of programming that we put up on our website. So we knew schools couldn't afford professional development, so we created virtual platforms and placed it on our website for them to use with their staffs. We also knew that they could not afford to pay any membership dues, and so we were able to waive the membership dues for a year. And we took the opportunity to put every college and university in this country who has an athletics department. We found them and put them in our system and told them they were in our system and start marketing to them. So we really, I'm very proud of the way that our staff handled everything. And, we're positioned for the future. We had our virtual convention this year, and if anybody could have a better lineup than Condoleezza Rice, Admiral McCraven, and Maria Taylor as 3 of the 4 headliners, I'd like to see it, because we did it and our people loved it, and our staff really just worked their butts off to make sure that the service that our members expected never wavered through COVID.
Speaking of that convention and Dr. Rice, she's one of my heroes. What I loved that she said was that in all her years in education and all her years in politics and all the committees that she served on, she said the best committee she ever served on was the CFP committee, and that how transparent everybody was and how honest everybody was, and how no one had their own individual agendas or an agenda for their school or conference. And that was really great to hear, from someone that's kind of an outsider but has touched intercollegiate athletics, to talk about what a joy it was to be part of that experience. I think said a lot about our industry.
Well, it says a lot about our industry, and also says a lot about the leadership of Bill Hancock, who this week is on the cover of Sports Business Journal, and for the wonderful job he's done in his career, just leading, with the NCAA and now with the college football playoffs, and just really being just unflappable, no ego, and just really believing in the team concept. And for him to carry that baton with the CFP has just been outstanding, and being able to pick the leaders that have participated in that committee is just a great case study that hopefully someone in the ranks will look at down the road and just look back and say what a great job that he and all the commissioners have done in creating that whole CFP. And BCS before that. Yeah,
no question about it. One of the things, Bob, I'm really proud of that y'all have done at NACDA is the John Mcclendon Foundation. Y'all, there was an old song called "I Was Country When Country Wasn't Cool." Y'all stepped up about diversity and diversity issues long before others did. Talk a little bit about the Mcclendon Foundation and what you're doing with that.
Yeah, well, again, that speaks to Mike's leadership, right? Mike and John Mcclendon were good friends. John Mcclendon was the first African-American professional basketball coach. Mike Cleary hired him when he was a general manager of the Cleveland Pipers. When they go on the road, they room together. Now, if you think about that, if you go back to the 60s, Irishman and the African-American, the GM, the guy that runs the team, and the coach rooming together. They were just amazing. And as he got on in years, he really wanted to. He had the foresight to know that minorities were not getting a fair shake, and he wanted to do everything he could to make sure that we try to level the bar if we could. So he created this Mcclendon Foundation. In the name of his great friend, John Mcclendon. And so every year, we give out, 10 postgraduate scholarships to young minorities across the country. Through the years, Capital One, the Fiesta Bowl has stepped up and endowed a scholarship. And that thing has really taken off. And then we had the very good fortune of bringing back one of our not only interns, but Mcclendon scholarship recipients, Adrian Haraway. We want to really expand the Mcclendon program and really do a better job. And Adrian came in. Adrian was running the academics at UVA. And we convinced him to come back and play a role with NACDA and really take this Mcclendon foundation to a new level, which he has. We started a new foundation, separate but in the same silo as Mcclendon Leadership Initiative, and we just had a phenomenal session this past weekend in Lexington. John Calipari came to one of our former interns and said, "Hey, we need to do something after George Floyd had that incident and passed." And Coach Calipari gave $1 million of his own money to start this program, and he convinced 16 other coaches to give money to create an intern program at their respective institution. So we have 30 kids in the pipeline now that are interning because a basketball coach paid for that internship. NACDA manages it. Former intern Greg Darbyshire, G3, coordinates the sale to the coaches. We have another company, Pro League, who receives the applications and fills the positions. But this whole thing is I'm so proud of what Mike started, and I'm so proud that we've been able to carry that torch, because nobody has sustained that program and expanded it like NACDA has. They have 33 kids in the program, and now we're going to be able to go out and start really making a difference. And one of the things that we told them this weekend in Lexington was, you know what? You were given this tremendous opportunity, and all eyes are upon you. And when you succeed, not if, but when you succeed, you need to go back and do the same for someone else. And I just wish we could do a better job of promoting this, because people need to know that NACDA and the Mclendon Foundation are really doing everything they can to move that needle and give young minorities an opportunity that no one else is giving them.
Well, I think it's so essential that a young student athlete looks up into administration and sees something that reflects them too. I just think that is so critical. And candidly, we've had a great year, I think, of hiring more minorities in intercollegiate athletics, and I think NACDA's played a huge role in that. Next year is the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and y'all have also done an amazing job with female leadership. And this year we've had a number of new female ADs, which I think, again, bodes well for our industry. It bodes well for the young women that you look up and say, well, maybe I can be an AD one day. Maybe I can pursue this. And y'all have always done that. You've had great female leadership come through as NACDA presidents. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we really have. I mean, you go through the years. We've had, when it wasn't in vogue. Again, Mike Cleary, it wasn't in vogue, but we did a little historical journey to our first and second conventions in the '60s, and Mike had African Americans speaking back then. I mean, nobody was doing that. We had Barbara Hedges, University of Washington, as our first president. We've had Barbara Hedges, Debbie Yao, Judy Rose, Joan Cronin. We've had female representation. We've had minority representation. We were doing it because it was the right thing to do, not because it was in vogue. And you know what? That's just how we are. But again, I attribute everything to Mike and what he taught us, and then I commend our staff for being great students and following that message and following that culture, that thought process, and that's what's different about us. We're the good housekeeping seal, and And we do it because it's right, irrespective of if it's in vogue or cool to do. But if it's the right thing to do, we're going to make sure that we do it.
Yeah, I love your value system. I mean, a lot of it came from Mike, but Bob, you've done a great job of carrying on the legacy. I tell you what, it's not easy following legends, and Mike Clary was a legend, and you've done an amazing job, again, not only of continuing to do the things that he wanted NACDA to do, but y'all scaled it. I mean, y'all have taken it to another level. I think he would be extremely proud of what the organization is doing. And I'm going to tell you right now, in this era, I mean, last year was a train wreck. I mean, you know, COVID-19 alone, and then you add George Floyd, and then you add NIL, and then you add transfer portal. You add, you know, financial issues. This is a train wreck. And you guys are helping schools and individuals navigate this, I think, better than anybody. But it is a weird year with all the things that are going on. What concerns you most about intercollegiate athletics right now?
Well, you know, there's a couple things. I'm really concerned about, you know, the NCAA restructuring, and I'm really concerned that I'm hopeful that the practitioners have their voices heard in the restructure, and I hope it's a bottom-up philosophy versus a top-down philosophy. That's the only way it's going to work. They have an incredibly aggressive timeline. I'm not sure that's a good thing. We need to think through decisions before they're made, but we need to let the practitioners make the decisions. The second thing that concerns me is the lack of collegiality that I'm seeing out there. You know, in the old days, everyone got along. No one made any money, but everyone got along. And now, you know, it just seems like, you know, the lack of collegiality across the board, I'm going to say primarily in Division I, is very, very concerning. And we just need to really think through that and think through the decisions. You know, but at the end of the day, we got a lot of smart people working in our business, and a lot of people who care about student athletes, and they're in this business for a reason, and it's for the betterment of the student athlete. And I have the utmost confidence that these smart folks are going to sit around the table and make sure that we get it right. Whatever that new shiny automobile is going to be, they're going to get it right. I have tremendous faith in them. You know, we faced issues before back in the mid-'80s when the Supreme Court said, hey, NCAA, you can't control football. A lot of people thought the sky was falling. And I think we've done a pretty good job since 1985 doing some things. But the world's changed. And, you know, the NCAA has been, you know, they're so ginormous that it's in regulatory because of what they do, the legislative body. It's really hard to be fluent and make quick decisions and thoughtful decisions. And maybe a new slimmed down model might be better. But again, the smart people, the decision makers behind there will sit back and hopefully do the right thing. And when this new model comes out, hopefully it will be good for everybody, for all student athletes.
Well, I think it goes back to the values. You know, we have this uniquely American institution called Intercollegiate Athletics. Nowhere else in the world does it exist. And it is a training ground for future leaders. It provides obviously great entertainment value for millions of people, but it also, you know, is an educational platform that takes young men and young women and helps them grow up and helps them become more effective and bigger leaders. I go back to what I said earlier about Mike, its legacy, and you're carrying on the legacy. It's your value system, and I think we need to continue to remember our value system in intercollegiate athletics. And it can't be about, I'm going to get mine now. It's got to be about what's good for the ecosystem, what's good long term. As an old basketball coach, you play too fast, you turn the ball over. I think there's a lot of unintended consequences that may be coming out of this because we've made, as you said, decisions maybe too quickly because we've been forced to do that. What else would you like to see NACDA do that you're currently not doing, or you're doing and you'd like to do it at a larger scale?
Well, I think I know what we're going to be really focusing on are a couple things. Going back to our conversation about, we have a lot of young ADs and experienced people sitting in the chairs. We need to do a better job of building platforms to help them do their job better. And then we also need to do a better job of building platforms to help the deputies and senior associates who are also new in their job do their job better. We need to get them, we need to get back to where we all can meet so we can start networking again and getting to know one another. Because one of the great things about this business is, you compete like heck on the field of play. But when it comes to administration or sharing ideas or concepts, there's no better incubator of doing that than NACDA and Intercollegiate Athletics. And we need to get back to that. We're doing it now virtually, but what did Martin Jarman say? Culture and leadership, it's blocking and tackling. You got to do it in person. And our people are dying to get together and be back in person again. So we're going to do everything we can to start creating these platforms where we could meet and get to know one another better, and share ideas like we used to. Because again, it's a different, boosters are different, student athletes are different. We need to circle the wagons with our leadership, with our administrators, and share ideas on how to tackle this post-COVID time in our lives. And we'll do it. We've been very successful before, and we've got great leadership with our current officers: Jamie Pollard, Rick Hart, Kim Record, Pat Chung, Penny Parker. We have great representation. We have diversity. We have gender. We have divisional. So we really have all bases covered, and we just need to create these platforms, and we need to get the world back to where we can meet again and really sit around a table from one another and share ideas. That's really going to be the key.
Well, let's close with this. Things do change, but leadership doesn't. And I can't thank you enough for the leadership you're providing at NACDA, what the organization is doing for intercollegiate athletics, and what the future will hold because of the leadership that you're playing. So, Bob, I can't thank you enough for being with us today from the bridge.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for all you do. And, it's always a pleasure to be with you. And if you ever need me or anyone on our staff again, just let us know, and we'd be happy to jump in and talk to you from our bridge.
That's great. Thanks, pal. Appreciate you. Let's climb back up on the soapbox. Lately, I've found myself using the expression, "I can't coach stupid," a lot. Seems that people are not doing what I expect them to do, like those refusing to wear a mask on a plane, or those who've decided not to get the vaccine, or those who post on social media why they are not getting the vaccine, or clients whose purpose and existence is to get people united and yet cannot or will not unite their own organizations. Like I said, I can't coach stupid. But then I went to church last Sunday, and the scripture from Ephesians said, "Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another with psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit. Sing and make music from your heart to the Lord, always giving thanks to God the Father for everything, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. No, I don't get drunk on wine, but I did substitute the word self-righteous for wine and realized I have been wrong. Trying to be a decent human being and being a Christian requires me to act differently. I need to be more respectful of others' opinions and habits, no matter how frustrating they may be to me. I still can't coach stupid. I just need to be a little more selective about calling it out. And that's my view from the Soapbox. It's that time to get back on the road with Rick. I love Mexican food. When my son Ryan got married to Celia in Los Angeles, we debated about what kind of food to serve at the reception. Ryan's lovely wife, Celia, is a second-generation Mexican-American. When I asked Ryan what he wanted to eat and what she wanted to eat at the reception, he said, well, let's have Mexican food. Charlotte and I thought, are we being kind of racist here? I mean, they're Mexicans. Do we serve Mexican food? Ryan kind of quickly put us in our place. He said, Dad, Italians like Italian food. Irish like Irish food. And yes, Mexicans like Mexican food. When you think about it, Ryan got married right after Christmas, and we were probably tired of all those traditional Christmas menus, and Mexican food was just what the doctor ordered. When I first moved to Charleston back in 2000, I had heard a story about Red Auerbach's famous Tuesday lunch in Georgetown. Y'all remember Red Auerbach, the great coach and general manager of the Boston Celtics. What a lot of people don't know is Red never permanently lived in Boston. He lived in Washington, D.C., where he had gone to college and where he was married and raised his two daughters. Well, when Red was coaching during that era in the 1940s, 50s, and early 60s, by the time you played a pro basketball game and were looking for something to eat late night, about the only thing open were Chinese restaurants. And so Red ate a lot of Chinese restaurants in cartons in his hotel room over the years. And so he loved Chinese food. And he ended up hosting a lunch after he retired in Georgetown at a famous Chinese restaurant every Tuesday. And Red had all kinds of amazing people drop in to eat lunch with him, like Senator Bill Bradley and media people and coaches and players and all kinds of stuff. So when I got to Charleston, I decided I wanted to do the same thing, but I like Mexican better than I like Chinese. So I hosted a lunch every week with a bunch of leaders in the sponsorship industry in Charleston at Santee's Mexican restaurant. It's the real deal Mexican here in Charleston. They have great, I don't mean good, I mean great enchiladas with varied sauces like mole or rancheros or verde. They have wonderful tamales. I like Mexican breakfast. Then they have huevos rancheros and huevos mexicana. They also have a really killer tortilla soup, all at reasonable prices. It's Santee's. It's a little south of the border in North Charleston on the road with Rick. That's a wrap for today's show. Thanks to my good friend Bob Vecchione for being our guest angler and sharing his perspective. We'll be right back here again next week from the bridge.